Hi, I am Tavish Carduff, and I am here with my dad, Duffy Carduff.
Hello.
He is joining us for Music Week. At our raw material, Music Week is the first of the three spiritual weeks. This particular session, we're looking at how to use each pillar. So we're in the music pillar. Let's just start from the most recent experience we've had with music, which is you got sick during the wholeness week of the winter session, and then got to go home from being in various hospitals and things during wholeness week of the spring session. So you ran a whole session of our raw material, and we as a family kind of had some spiritual meaning and feelings around that. But let's just talk from your perspective. What was it like healing and spending that time being sick with music?
Well, I kind of missed it a lot because I didn't really have access to music for at least the first part of it. And the first part of it I don't remember any of anyway. Once I had music on my phone that I was able to listen to and put on and listen to all night long. So that was kind of brought me back to basics and where I wanted to be.
Do you remember bonding with any of the staff at the hospital or anything like that over music?
Well, what I really remember, the first bath I was finally able to take, or shower, my nurse came and gave me a shower and brought in her boom box, and it was a Motown rock and roll shower. And that was the absolute epitome of my time in the hospital for that.
Every day we would pick out what kind of music we would play for you. And we always made sure your phone was charged and plugged in at night and that there was music playing. And we felt like we connected with the staff because they would come in and say they liked your music.
That's true. That happened everywhere. And they would come in, sometimes they would dance into the room. And it was, yeah.
We got to see the lighter side of the ICU.
I'm remembering more of that now.
Pretty
But
cool,
yeah,
right?
It was. My life has had a great soundtrack, starting with when I was very young and had the radio on all night long. And found out that I knew songs that I didn't think I'd ever even heard, but somehow I'd picked them up overnight. And a lot of people were really against rock and roll for some unknown reason. And it was the days of Elvis and Buddy Holly and Bill Haley and the Comets, and I remember all of those listening to KAAY, the Mighty 1090 out of St. Louis, I believe it was. In the middle of the night, you could pick it up. And then I could also pick up Wolfman Jack out of Del Rio, Texas. KOMA out of Oklahoma City was another one that you could get late at night that you couldn't get during the day. The Kansas City stations, WHB, was the big rock and roll station. And then KY 102 came along.
I just remembered that you had something to do with a rock concert at one point when you mentioned rock station.
In 1969, we put on the Kansas City Rock Festival, along with some other people, and we were partners. This was after Woodstock and after the Dallas Pop Festival, and it was our one and only foray into promoting rock music. The headliner was Strawberry Alarm Clock. We had the Guess Who, Chicago Transit Authority, which became Chicago, the Steve Miller Blues Band, and a whole lot of local bands. We were told we had to hire the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department for security, and they were taking tickets at the gates and pocketing the money. And so we approached them about that and said, this isn't right. They got mad and they all walked off. It suddenly became a free concert.
Oh gosh.
But we had bought rain insurance.
Did it rain?
It had to rain 1/10 of an inch for us to collect on the rain insurance, which was $100,000. And we got 11/100ths of an inch of rain after we paid $3,000 to have the clouds seeded. Hey, it wasn't enough to really bother anything, but it got us the money to pay off the bands, and our business would have gone under forever if that hadn't happened. So, and then we lasted another 48 years.
When I think back to my childhood, one of the songs, and I don't know what it goes to. I have a memory of you singing to us Magic Carpet Ride. You didn't read us bedtime stories. You made up bedtime stories for us. So they used whatever had gone on during the day, or a stuffed animal, or whatever we handed you to use to tell the story, he would tell the story with. So I always had this imagination space that was a magic carpet. Like, I could go around on my magic carpet whenever I was listening to music, and music has always transported me. When I was a little kid, you owned a record store. And so flipping through albums at all times, just knowing what the artwork was, knowing, just having these connections to words if they were on the, outside. I never saw the inside covers because most of them were covered in cellophane, but if I could get a hold of an album and read whatever of it I could, I would. So I've always connected through just those things, not necessarily the music itself, just even the art, or the tone and feeling of the album before you even hear it.
Well, we discovered a lot of people we really liked that were little known from having the record store and looking at the album covers and thinking, this sounds interesting. And so we would play it. And, that's how we found Jimmy Buffett back in the early 70s.
Ooh, what was that like?
The first Jimmy Buffett song I remember was Come Monday. I had a friend who was a DJ down in Fort Scott, Kansas. And he would come in the record store and find us playing Jimmy Buffett. And he was a Jimmy Buffett fan too. He had an interview set up with Jimmy Buffett and asked me if I would like to come along with him. And I said, yeah, I sure would. And so we went, and he interviewed Jimmy Buffett. I got to sit in on it. Jimmy Buffett was playing a softball game that afternoon against all the local media at Barstow School. He didn't have enough players for his team, and so he invited us to play on the Coral Reefers softball team against the media people. And so I got to play softball with Jimmy Buffett and got free tickets to the concert that night, which was at Memorial Hall.
Can you remember your first concert?
The first concert I went to, I think, was the Kingston Trio.
Ooh, that's cool.
And I was always a big Kingston Trio fan. I had all of their albums and would play them. Kingston Trio and the Letterman were always on late at night, and I would stack up all my albums, and they would play, and then sometimes I'd turn on the radio and it would play all night. And so had music all night long through my whole childhood. Music's going all day long here at home.
We had to turn it off. We turned off John Prine to just record this.
Yes.
The magic of music and the ways that it brings people together. Just when I walked in here today, you were listening to John Prine, and I had just turned off a John Prine song in the car. And music is one of the places that it's easy, I would say even the easiest, to connect to other people, because no matter what your political affiliation,
Pretty much everybody likes the music.
Right. There are people that love Jimmy Buffett, there are people that hate Jimmy Buffett, but it doesn't follow the regular political lines, right?
Not at all.
Country music, same thing. That's a good one from my childhood. I thought I hated country music when I was a little kid, and I got to go to a concert. I showed you the lineup the other day. I actually looked it up, the Missouri State Fair, 1979. And we got in line in the place early to be close for the Willie Nelson concert. I was a country music hater, so this, and I wanted to be doing anything but sitting in the hot sun waiting for a concert that I didn't want to see, and I was 11 years old. However, when Willie Nelson opened the show and started and sang all these songs, and I went back and showed him the lineup, it was amazing.
Well, Willie's always opened with Whiskey River.
Blew me away. I had never seen it just blew me away. I think the same thing with Mick Jagger sometimes opens with Buddy Holly's and
Not Fade Away.
Not Fade Away. Everybody comes together and feels that jolt for a second of the same powerful energy. And when we look at, being able to harness that energy or move it around our body or clear it from our body or use it to heal, the powers that this spiritual connection has are bigger than what we allow. Usually because we let all the differences or our own ignorance or the things that we're uncomfortable with be in the way of just simply listening and hearing and sharing.
Well, I remember how sad it was when we lost Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper. The day the music died, and I remember that well. It was a very, very sad day. I was sitting at home and I heard about it on the radio. It died in Clear Lake, Iowa, but the other saddest day was the day John Lennon got shot.
I was in 6th grade when that happened. It knocked my teacher out.
I believe it. It took me too. And you think of what he would have done had he lived. I mean, John Lennon was probably the greatest songwriter ever.
Let's think about that for a minute. John Lennon, but so many other singers that died early.
There's a lot of them. I mean, Buddy Holly was unbelievable, and
What did he have, 2 years?
Maybe. Hank Williams was 29. And think of everything he wrote before the age of 29.
I'm always amazed when I run across here's another song that he wrote.
Right. And a lot of the John Lennon songs weren't even recorded by the Beatles. I mean, they were recorded by other artists. And then you find out later that he wrote them, or a lot of them with Paul.
Did you get to check out the Beatles documentary?
I've seen the first part of it. I haven't seen the last 3 yet.
One thing that really blew my mind about it was how they worked together.
Yeah.
Even in disagreement, they were willing to come back and listen and hash it out, and for the sake of the product.
Right, of the song. They knew when it wasn't where they wanted it to be, and they would add this or delete that or take this, and they worked really well together. It was amazing how all 4 of them did that.
You have to be willing to strip yourself of your ego. And in that spiritual space of music, it does allow us to do that at some level. It allows us to let our guard down, to let our feelings swim around, to try on the feelings of whatever's being projected in the song. Really just gives us a lot of space to breathe, clear. If we sing along, we've got to fill our lungs up a lot. We breathe differently than we do when we're just talking. So just singing along to music changes the way you hold your body and changes the way you're breathing.
And changes your whole outlook on everything.
Everything. I've always used music. If I want a certain mood, or I'm getting ready to do something, or
right.
Change the tone, especially cleaning the house or something like that. I don't know how anybody does that without music, because if I don't gear myself up to enjoy it, this can be a terrible experience.
Like Marie, whenever she'd have a bad day, she would crank up the stereo and put on Aerosmith at full blast. And I mean, that puts you in a whole nother kind of mood.
It does.
And
it does. That's a good one.
In the mornings, to wake you guys up, I used to put on Queen, Keep Yourself Alive, and play that at full blast to wake you up. Harry Nelson's Jump Into the Fire.
I listened to Jump in the Fire just the other day, and what a great change your mood song.
Oh, it truly is.
It's in Goodfellas, right? So a lot of people
Oh, it might be. I don't know.
will connect. I think it's in the scene where the helicopters are following him, and he's, at the end. I think it's that. And it's in another movie as well. I think people who have never heard that song identify with it because of those movies, and it leads you through a whole different sense of feeling. It's just powerful song. All of Harry Nelson's.
Well, he's another one we lost at a young age. To alcohol and pills. Think of all the people we lost to that. I mean, Elvis.
Fred Eaglesmith wrote a great song about it.
Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin,
Jim Morrison,
Kurt Cobain,
Dennis Wilson. There's that Amy Winehouse, 27 Club.
Oh yeah,
that's a big one.
Yes, it is. But it's still amazing that those people accomplished all that by the age of 27.
And think of how that club itself is seen as sort of a mystical, spiritual thing.
Right.
It's an example. It's almost like a symbol of pay attention to what you're working with and what you have and what you're given, because the excess might burn you out before you're ready to go.
Well,
before anyone else is ready for you to go.
As I was reading your blog yesterday that you sent me, immediately the song that came on was Sounds of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel, which tied right in with what you had written in the blog, and it was like, oh my God, this is providential.
I think what you say about there's a soundtrack to your life. I think that's true of all of us if we're paying attention. And there's always a song playing in the background of our head. There's always something, if we can clear ourselves out enough to listen to it. There's always music to be heard in nature. There's always a rhythm happening around us that is tying us to something outside of ourselves, something bigger than ourselves. But there's something about drawing into yourself to reach it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, but you've got to be open to allow that to happen.
And music opens that door.
It does.
Music opens that space.
If you allow it to. Well, for me, I mean, it's the old stuff that I really like.
Everybody's got that. Everybody's got that handful of stuff that is just so personal. So personal to what you grew up with and knew. And I always say every time there's a siren or a chime in the middle of when we're talking, that it's emphasizing what's being said. And I think that stands to reason right there.
Well, the station Outlaw Country
it's a good one.
Is incredible. I mean, it's really fun to listen to that station. Every once in a while, a real nugget comes on that you've never heard before.
And that's tough for you.
That's just so good. And it's like, oh my God, where did that come from? And then I've got to find out who that is. And I mean, like, Hayes Carl is a guy that I heard on Outlaw Country that I was unaware of. Paul Thorne is another one that is just fantastic, that, is not in the mainstream.
I remember coming to you after I had seen Hayes Carl open for Todd Snyder and telling you about him, and you already had an album, and I was like, what? How do you know this guy? That also just tells me the right music reaches the right audience.
Yeah.
And we are so vastly different as human beings. Well, I am grateful as I study these pillars and kind of work with them. I'm grateful that you gave me such an education in music. I mean, one of the games that you used to play with us anytime we're in the car and something was on the radio, you would always ask us who sang the song. I mean, we were always not just listening to the music, but playing around with the words, making up different lyrics, or
Right.
making fun of each other for saying the wrong lyrics. But knowing who sang it, and then you would always add in, well, do you know who originally sang it? So you were always even tying it back to old stuff that we didn't know. And I'd really appreciate that was front and center in our lives. I think we take so many things for granted that we don't know are unique to us. That magic carpet ride, as it were, has been such a key to my own self-esteem in life. Every time I go through something that's challenging, or my ego gets hurt, or my feelings get hurt, or deal with something difficult, I really can get lost in songs that will change my mood. They just strike a chord that makes it feel different. We each have our own set of spiritual connections. Music's one of the easiest ways for us to see them. But look around and listen and see what you can learn from watching other people enjoy what they enjoy, even if you don't like what they're listening to. My hope for the future would be that everybody does continue to find something that when they close themselves off and listen to it, they can feel their own soul. That would be my hope.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, and my parents listened to Count Basie and Tommy Dorsey and the big band sounds.
Oh, they loved it.
And those are great. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin. Those guys were incredible.
We have a familial tie by marriage and all kinds of things to Frank Sinatra. I think even that gave me a sense of something powerful. Just having that tie, just feeling that connection. I am somehow connected to Frank Sinatra, as many degrees of separation as that is. It was something that felt powerful to me on some level. It raised me up a little bit.
It was pretty cool, and he was amazing. He was amazing.
These are the subtle notes that affect our esteem and how we feel. And if we can support that stuff through music, I think whatever the future brings us, we're more ready to handle it.
There will always be music.
Because music does make us feel all of the things we can feel. What they say now is all the feels.
Mm-hmm. Is that what they say?
That's what they say.
All right.
Well, thank you for joining us, Dad, and being part of our raw material.
Well, sure. I really enjoyed it. And as you know, music is a huge part of my life, too.
I'm glad this little journey with healing has ended with you home, in your own home.
No kidding. I'm so glad to be here.
We'll go ahead and shut this down and turn your music back on.
I shall. Thank you so much.
Thanks. We'll see you next week for Food Week.
Bye-bye.